who is the light of the world. Christ is risen. Christ is risen. Christ is risen. That has appeared to Simon. Please be seated. The readings today are very close to our tradition. In the first reading, you heard, what did Jesus do after he rose from the dead? He did not open a school. He did not found a classroom or a university. He did not give out diplomas. He did not even teach all that much. If you listen to the first reading, what did Jesus do with his disciples? He ate and drank with them. He ate and drank with them. As a matter of fact, in the Acts of the Apostles, it said this went on for 40 days as he appeared to them. Unfortunately, some of the English translations, when I see that, I want to knock my head off, said he had meetings with them. If Jesus had meetings with us, we wouldn't have a church. But Jesus ate with his disciples. Because when you eat, you give life mutually to each other. We have reflected since Holy Thursday on the fact that gratitude is an action, not just a thought. Well, so is faith an action. It has nothing to do whether I agree or disagree with anything. We have turned that faith into that these days. I agree with the Pope. I don't agree with what the bishop's doing. I didn't like what the priest said in the homily. I don't agree with all that. So I don't go to church. In other words, you don't know what faith is. Because God will never ask you one question when you stand before the proverbial 40 pearly gates. He'll never ask your opinion on anything. Nothing. He will ask you how you actively love someone. And this action of love is even, one of the earliest names for the Mass, especially the consecration, was the actio gratiarum, the action of giving thanks. And so Jesus, as an action, pulls his disciples together, and you know very well, you heard it in the second reading. All of you who went someplace or turned on your ovens and put the potsek in the oven or a loaf of bread, you use yeast. And I hope you use new yeast, not the old yeast. We throw that out. The Jews still do that to this day in Passover, which is also celebrated its last day today. And that new yeast is new life rising in the oven as a resurrection in the home, so that you can sit down like Jesus did and eat with each other. There's another thing which is not so frequent in North American families, is a daily common meal. That's why our faith is falling apart. When the church rediscovers eating with people who are searching for Jesus, and with people who believe like the disciples did, this church will be renewed. And this is not done by any bishop or any priest. It's done in every home. Because that's what the disciples did. We have an account of it in the book of Acts, Acts 2:42. They did it every day. And you know what they did when they ate during the week? Oh my God. They talked about the homily. They talked about the scriptures. They talked about how they encountered Jesus at Mass. That was their conversation. No business. Nothing. Their business was God. And that is where renewal happens. So in our tradition, when we brought yesterday to church with so many people here, foods to be blessed, which all have symbolic value, they're not just pigging out on anything. They all symbolize something that's in the scriptures, an encounter with God. We encounter God, and I hope we'll be going home and sharing that food. Know that Jesus is at your table. The prayers say that, so recognize him at your table. Don't just eat kielbasa. Recognize that Jesus is there in the breaking of the bread. And my last, if faith is an action, eating with each other in action, sharing, particularly the blessed egg in our tradition, is one of those beautiful actions a father or senior member of the family does at home. Now, I boiled 12 eggs this morning because we're going to have a few people, close family over, just to share the egg. We do that every year after the resurrection mass. And we're going to cut them in half, put some horseradish on it, salt and pepper. And because I end up, being the head of the house, I would really wish all those people who shared the eggs with me would come back and take over for me. Really, they did it much better. But it's left to us to hand this on and to do something with our faith, not talk about anything we don't like. There's a rule at the table. You never talk about what you don't like. If you do, you're set to your rule. And you don't talk about who you don't like. You don't talk about anything you don't like. You talk about Jesus sitting at your table with you. You talk about the homily the priest said any sense, made any sense. Well, at least you could talk about eggs and fish, okay? And say that this is how Jesus wants to meet you at your tables. I'm sure most of you are familiar with that old traditional painting of Jesus knocking on the door. Werner Salman painted that, as son of a Lutheran minister. It was found in all kinds of homes, Catholic and Protestant, and even non-believers, because Jesus is coming home. But there's one thing that picture misses. It's the second part of the book of Revelation, the second line. This is where sometimes some traditions only pick out a section of it and dwell on that. We take the whole sentence. And it says, I stand at the door and knock, and whoever opens to me, I will come in and sit down with them at table, and they shall eat with me, share a meal, and I shall eat with them. But it's not there. Because some people have a problem with Jesus' presence in the broken bread, which we honored in the procession. That Jesus is present among us, amongst broken bread, and every piece of bread you're going to take into your hand reminds you of Jesus. So when you take that bread into your hand today at your tables, just say, they recognized in the breaking of the bread. And there was not anything about agreement in opinions on anything. As a matter of fact, people who disagree can eat, or else they go hungry. And to eat in communion with others who are believers is the greatest gift we have been given here at the Eucharist, and then at our family tables, remembering those who have passed this on to us and maybe passed away. So remember, faith is an action. It is not an opinion. And the action comes from meeting Jesus. That's why we throw flowers. That's an action. That's why we ring bells. That's an action. That's why we burn incense. That's an action. That's why we carry pictures and banners. Those are all actions. That's why we walk. They're actions of faith. And without this, our faith atrophies. And we go into our heads and we ruminate. And you know the people who ruminate, they often disagree. Sometimes even with themselves. So take the egg, slice it in half, put some horseradish on it, salt and pepper, put it on a plate, and go to each member of your family. And tell them what? Christ is risen. At your table, Christ is risen. In your home, Christ is risen. Spirit to silence.